Fantastic. All right, so welcome everybody to our presentation, and welcome to everybody who is joining us on YouTube sometime in the future. I'm going to start out by sharing my screen here, so give me just a moment. All right, so welcome to our little presentation on we've called Members Lead Our Union, how the PSC elections work, and why you should become a leader. Before we get started, we're gonna talk about a few things. I'm going to take the first section. Lori's going to take the second section. Natalie's going to take the third section. But before we get started, I want to give a special thanks to Kathleen Offenhully, who is the chair of the PSC Elections Committee. She has, for weeks, endured our detailed, persistent questions about all of the ins and outs of PSC election policy and rules and regulations. So thank you to Kathleen for doing that. So I wanted to start just quickly. The first section, I'm just gonna give sort of a little introduction to how we think about leadership, and tell you sort of how I got here personally, and everybody else might have their own story. But last year, in the middle of our one of our most challenging times as a union, we had a PSC-wide election for our major officers. And for the president, the vice president, the secretary of the PSC, for all of CUNY. And in that election, we had a voter turnout of only about 22.1%, which I thought was really interesting and sort of concerned me personally, because I thought, well, we're headed into a contract year in not too long, and we have less than a quarter of our members engaging in elections. So wouldn't it be interesting to see if we can open that up a little bit and encourage more people to come into leadership, and just as importantly, to help and encourage members to become more involved and more active and just more aware of what's happening with our leadership in our elections. And I want to give you a quick, let me give you a quick sort of outline of our agenda for this evening. I'm going to take this first part talking about just sort of an introduction to union leadership. We're going to talk about the specific leadership positions we have in the chapter and outline those for you. And it's actually great because we have some of our very chapter leaders here, so they may be able to fill in some of the details and some of the gaps that we have there. Third, we're going to talk about the specific chapter election rules, all of the things that you need to do, all the T's you need to cross and I's you need to dot as part of the candidacy discussion or process. And then finally, we're going to have questions and discussion, just sort of a free chance to talk and ask any questions if we can answer them, and if we can't, see if we can figure out where we can find those answers. So I wanted to start thinking about union leadership by thinking about two different ways that we can conceive of the way that a labor union works. And I want to say that these two different ways are every union works on is really one or the other. Every union has elements of each, but I think it's an interesting way to sort of think about what are our priorities as a union. And here are some links. I forgot about this. We'll share these a little bit later for important things. So who's in charge of a union? Who runs a union? There are two sort of ways to think about this. We have one model that we sometimes call the business model, and another model that we sometimes call the organizing model. Let me give you a brief introduction to each of these, and then just sort of talk about some of the implications of this. So in a business model of a union, a union is sort of it operates like a business that provides a service to its dues-paying members. I have heard Laura Tenenbaum talk about this as sort of, when people think of our union as being a fee-for-service union, or any union is a fee-for-service union. In the organizing model, the members are involved and active in their own behalf. These are two different ways that we can conceive of the way that a union works. The business model, some people liken it to hiring a lawyer. You hire a lawyer when you get in trouble, you pay the lawyer a fee, and they help you out. I always like to think of the business model as, if anyone has a car or has had a car in the past, the American Automobile Association, the AAA. You pay AAA an annual dues fee of, I don't know, $60, $70 or something. Then you forget that you're a member of AAA until that moment when you're on the road and your car breaks down, and you think, oh, I'm so glad I have AAA. I can just call them up and they'll take care of everything for me. That's kind of what the business model of a union is like. So let's think about, what are some of the implications of a union that operates sort of more towards the side of the business model versus more towards the side of the organizing model. And I have to say, most importantly, this affects not only the way that the union works, but the way in which members conceive of the union, the way in which members understand their own union. That's maybe the most important thing. So who is the union? Who do members imagine the union is? Well, in the business model, members imagine that the union are the leaders and the staff. When they say, oh, I'm going to go talk to the union about this, what they mean is, oh, I'm going to go talk to the leaders and the staff of the union. In the organizing model, members see the union as themselves, as each other, as all of us here in this room today. Certainly the leaders and the staff are an important part of that, but they're one out of many. In a business model, leadership structure is top down. The leaders drive the boat. The leaders steer the direction of the union. In an organizing model, it's bottom up. The direction comes from the members. The way that the union in a business model, members see the union as sort of an insurance policy, as this third party that they can call on when they get in trouble. And I think this is maybe the most important difference between these two models. In an organizing model, members take personal responsibility for the success or failure of the union. If the union doesn't do something that a member wants, they realize it's not the fault of the leaders. That responsibility lies with the members. It also has some implications for the way that the union works. In the business model, the union's attitude towards the employer is we have to have a good relationship with you. The good relationship with the employer is the most important thing. In the organizing model, defending members is the most important thing and the highest priority. In the business model, leadership is exclusive. There's not much turnover from year to year. Leaders may occupy their positions for years, or even in some cases, decades. In the organizing model, leadership is inclusive, and the composition of the workforce is reflected in the leadership. So if half your workforce is of one particular position, that will be reflected in leadership. Finally, in its attitude towards members, leadership keeps tight control over information. In a business model, in an organizing model, information is spread widely and focuses on educating members. A couple more differences. In the business model, grievances are handled privately between the affected member and a grievance specialist. In the organizing model, grievances are handled openly wherever possible, and whenever possible, we confront supervisors with solidarity. In the business model, member mobilization is sort of like a faucet that's turned on and off by leadership. When we have a rally, the call goes out from leadership. Here's where our rally is. Here's what our rally is going to be. Members show up, and then when it's over, they say, "Let us know. We'll get in touch when we need you again." In the organizing model, it's the members who plan strategies and initiate actions. And finally, in a business model, the bargaining, when we're bargaining for a contract, as we are in our own union coming up in February, in the business model, bargaining tends to be closed, and there's not a lot of information about what's actually going on in bargaining sessions that's flowing towards members. In the organizing model, bargaining is open, and there's a lot of information and sometimes out-and-out accessibility to the actual bargaining sessions. So I share all of this, and I'm sorry to sort of go with all these abstractions right at the beginning of this. But I share all of these things because I think this is an important place for us to start thinking about leadership. Because, as I said, every single union on the planet has elements of both of these models, the business model and the organizing model. And for some unions, a business model is a more appropriate model. For some unions, an organizing model is a more appropriate model. But the thing I like about the organizing model in relationship to leadership is that it puts the onus not on leaders, but on members. I think one of the most difficult things about getting leaders to get involved in our union, any union, is that it can be an intimidating and a time-consuming position to take on. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of work, and you're sort of making yourself into a target. I think, at least in terms of leadership, if we think more in terms of an organizing model, I think it's good to know that members, for anybody who's a leader, for anyone here who wants to run as a leader, we as members have your back, and we're going to be sharing these responsibilities with you. So I think this is probably a good place for me to turn it over to Lori, if I'm remembering correctly. This is where we're going to switch horses here. So Lori, thank you everyone for your time, and Lori, let me switch this over to you. So Lori, I think you're muted.
Okay, give me a second. I thought I had it. Okay, share. Okay. I would just like to add on to what Scott said in terms of, having, since we have such a large part-time workforce, having more of the work shared makes a lot more sense, and we can welcome a lot more people into the activities of the union on a more regular basis. Okay, so who should run for a leadership position? Anyone who wants to, someone who wants to have more influence on working conditions, increase campus connections. It's certainly something that I have experienced working with the union. Increased communication about working conditions. People need to be talking about what we're living on campus in terms of the environment in the classrooms. I've been working on something and working on getting people to report conditions in the B building. I didn't want to do that. Hopefully we can get more change with more people, more voices contributing, and build the change with our colleagues and coworkers. So who can run for office in the PSC CUNY College Chapter? All full-time faculty, teaching adjuncts, non-teaching adjuncts, and CETs, or continuing education teachers. We do get people coming to our meetings from continuing ed. So we'll, as you see, the HEOs and CLTs have their own PSC chapters. What if I'm not a member? You can click here. you can click here. It will take you to the PSC CUNY website. I have cards in my office. If anyone wants to sign a card, and I will make sure the person gets it. I've never been too involved. There's no, if you want to get involved, there are ways to do it, and you're welcome to. And should I run for office? Yes. More voices, more diversity will improve everyone's experience. I only work part-time. That's how I started, by saying the experience of, I was an adjunct for 18 years. And I was an adjunct in TELC, in the English Language Center. And we were a unique group of adjuncts, because we always worked at the same time. So we had a lot of connections, and we worked together. But most adjuncts don't have that benefit, as Adela mentioned. So this is joining the union, becoming a leader is another way to build more connections in the college. Do I have to run for office? No, you don't have to take on a leadership position and run for office to be involved in the union. We have the campus action team. You could work with the department representative or be a department representative. That's what I've been doing for the last few years, to be active in the union. And what else? I'm sorry, I can't see the last one. Just have to, and be a union member. Speak up when you have something. Share your experiences with people. Sometimes I just call it gossiping. But all right, so leadership positions, we have chapter officers, delegates to the delegate assembly who go to monthly meetings, and other positions. So the officers are the chair, vice chair, and secretary. I believe we have the secretary and the vice chair with us today. Lara couldn't make it. And there are 4 at-large positions. There has been conversation about assigning certain tasks to at-large positions. For example, perhaps leading the efforts to get changes in the B building, things like that. The delegates to the delegate assembly there are 7 based on the size of our chapter, I believe, and 5 alternates, and they go to delegate assembly meetings. Kristen, you're a delegate, right? No, not anymore. You were? Okay. Delegates go to, I'm not sure, they go to the delegate assembly meetings. In the future, we'd like to see more communication from what happens at those meetings, because in all my years at CUNY, I haven't heard much. The only once have I heard about what went on at a delegate assembly, because it was enormously controversial. So alternates would go in their stead. 2 PSC welfare fund representatives. There hasn't been a ton of clarity on what they do, but Scott, do you have anything to, I don't know. So.
Okay, so I'll
take
take
it off to
yeah, so I'll take over
Natalie.
from here. So let me just share my screen. Okay. So thank you so much to Scott and Lori for starting us off and giving some more explanations. I put in the chat, we also created a handout with all of the logistics of this, and we've worked pretty hard on it, and as we find out more, we'll certainly make changes to it. But if you want to look at it while I'm talking, that might help. We tried to kind of distill it into this presentation. So how do you actually run for a chapter office? So I'm going to go over some key dates and deadlines, and then 2 different kind of ways you can run, as well as just a general thing about caucuses. So I put this link in the chat, the how to run for office overview, which has all of these details. So for this coming up election, January 13th, 2023 is the deadline for declaring candidacy for one of those chapter office positions that Lori just kind of went over. So if you want to run for the chapter leader, or if you want to run as a delegate, the first thing to do is January 13th, you have to declare your candidacy. And after that, you submit, so to declare your candidacy, you submit your candidate form, which we have the link for, to the PSC central office. Once they receive your form, they will send a petition form, and it's in digital or in print. You get to decide. And then you'll collect signatures from members of the chapter. So that's why it's important to know who's a member of the faculty chapter. And then you submit those signatures by March 6th. After that, that means that folks are officially on the ballot. Then between like submitting that, like you're kind of publicizing your campaign. The election actually happens in April by mail. So you members get the ballot at their house so they can vote, and they send it back in. So you basically have between like February and April to tell people about your campaign. And then the vote happens in April. And then in the summer, fall is kind of like when the transition happens to the new leadership for the next year. So we have a lot of lead time. So we figured we'd go over it. So there's two ways you can run for office. You can run for office as an individual person, like an individual member of the chapter. And you can run for any of the positions that Lori outlined and are also on the handout. So you first, identify the position you're interested in. Then you have to sign the Declaration of Chapter Office Candidacy form and send it to the PSC Central Office. That's the January deadline. Then the PSC Central Office will send you that petition sheet. As an individual, you have to collect 25 signatures from members of the chapter. So any, faculty, part-time, full-time, as well as the other categories of workers in our chapter. Then you submit that signature petition by March 6th, again, to the PSC Central Election Committee, and you'll be on the ballot. So it's pretty simple. And again, you could just decide to run. Anyone could decide to run who's a member, and just fill out that candidacy form and the petition form. Another way to run is as a slate. And a slate is a set of candidates who decide to run together on a shared platform. And a slate is where, if those people are running a shared platform, a voter, when they get the ballot in the mail, they can just check off one box and it's an automatic vote for everyone. If they check off that one box, they cannot vote individually for other positions. So it's just something, it's always good to educate our members about in terms of voting practices. So the way running as a slate, so if there's other people that you have a shared, platform with, and you want to run as a group, as a slate, then you identify which roles everyone's going, like which offices folks are going to run for. And then each individual candidate has to sign a declaration of candidacy form, and they give it to, it's known as the slate designee. So one person, part of the group, has to kind of like collect all those candidacy forms, and then that one person turns them in together as a slate. So the PSC Central Office understands they're running as a group. Then the PSC Central Office gives the petition worksheet back to the slate designee, and then the slate only has to collect 25 signatures for everyone. So you don't have to collect individual per office. It's just 25, and then as long as you get 25, the whole slate will be on the ballot. And the slate designee kind of usually is in charge of that. And then, of course, you publicize your campaign as a slate. So one aspect about slate, we have kind of a history in the chapter where there has been a slate that runs together, and most people understand like a slate is a caucus. So I'm going to go over caucus. So a slate and a caucus kind of, they're somewhat, by PSC rules, similar. It's like a shared platform. And as I said before, the slate or caucus has to run candidates for no less than 25% of available offices. But for our cases, that's not many. You can just run a few people. But a caucus basically is anyone who decides as a group that they have a common platform, or they just want to elect a bunch of people together and running candidates for chapter office, or for PSC wide office. Historically in the PSC, we have the new caucus, which was like a historic caucus that came together with a particular platform and a set of ideological beliefs about how to run the union, who have been kind of in power for at least as long as I've been a PSC member. So in the history of like slates, frequently new caucus runs a slate in chapter elections as well as PSC central elections. Recently, there's been another CUNY-wide caucus that formed, the Rank and File Action Caucus, otherwise known as RAFA, who also on some campuses have run slates for chapter elections as well as CUNY-wide. But anyone can form a caucus. There's no official registration process. You just say you're a caucus, and you can, if you want, as a caucus, run a slate together. And basically, it just saves you time because you can run a bunch of people for positions and just get 25 signatures for everyone. But it's also incredibly easy to run as an individual. You don't have to do this caucus slate kind of approach. You can just say, I want to run for this particular position, and then just collect 25 signatures on your petition once you've declared your candidacy. So that's kind of the basics of it. The handout that we created has like all of the different rules and links to the like official PSC constitution and the policies about it. So we can kind of leave it at that and then take questions or thoughts about this whole process and how we can get more folks from our chapter to run for office, as well as get engaged in the whole process of building leadership from our members. Thanks. So we can start with Q&A if anyone has questions, or if my very quick overview of all those details, we can go over them again.
I do have a question. I'm downloading the link, so because I'm not sure, I didn't understand about running by yourself. So what is the pro and the cons again? If you can.
Personally, I don't think there's any pro or cons, but it's just running by yourself. There's two basic steps. First, you just fill out the candidacy form and you submit that to the PSC central office by January. Then once you do that, they will send you the petition form, and then you just need 25 signatures from chapter members. And then once you have those 25 signatures, you submit them to PSC central office again, and you'll be on the ballot. And then you just need to make sure that people know you're on the ballot and to vote for you. That's kind of like the thing. The slate part, it's historically been used just for the ease of when members get the ballot, they just check one box and then automatically they're voting for like 10 people at once. So that's why like the pro of the slate is that if people who are ideologically aligned want their people elected, then they only need to tell regular voters, just vote for the slate instead of checking off individual boxes. And then your vote you do one vote and it goes to 10 people, basically, for all the positions. But it's not harder or easier either way. You could totally run as an individual member. It's just making sure to tell people to look for your name and to vote for you. And so they know they need to vote for you and they need to vote for other people separately by name, so that you have, you'll be elected to that position.
And I would encourage running as an individual, simply because people haven't been doing it. We've been doing the having the slate, and sometimes having only one slate run uncontested. And so if there was, the advantage of running as an individual is we can build some dynamism into the process of building our election leadership. So I think that we describe the slate because that's how it's been done for so long, but there's no reason that it has to be, that it's easier. There's no reason to say that it's easier and it has to be done that way forever.
Another question, because it is difficult for a person that is not in campus all day long, like a full-timer, that especially adjuncts, that they have to look for other jobs and they cannot be involved in campus life. So this 9 to 5 makes more sense for full-timers, but there is no really equilibrium with that, because at least I don't feel represented by anybody. I don't vote. I haven't, not even once. But I'm always interested into being part of the union, but in an active way. But then how can I be active when I have to do other things? And I do have a full-time job, but I know that most of us adjuncts, they have jobs in different campuses in CUNY, different colleges in CUNY, or they have also jobs in other universities and colleges within the area. So what kind of, because it is easy to, to be part of a slate when you feel that your responsibilities share, versus individual is like you get all the responsibility in you or with you. I don't know, I feel that way. Somebody that has experience.
Well, technically a slate is just a grouping for election purposes, but if you, like any of us runs as an individual, the whole team of the chapter, like all those positions, ideally will be working together in order to, support each other. And I think that's part of kind of the culture that hopefully we can continue to build, is that all of the labor doesn't fall onto one person, because our chapter has so many different offices. Like we have a chair, vice chair, 4 officers at large, secretary. And so there are multiple ways for people to engage and provide that leadership. And I mean, personally, I've done that while being a part-time worker. And it's certainly stressful, but it is possible. And it's really just like, trying to figure out how to work collectively as a group of leaders to kind of give that vision. Laura has her hand up. I don't know if you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to clarify the same point to Adela, that, that once people are elected, all the are working together, regardless of whether McManus is late or not. I just wanted to mention, because you asked, somebody mentioned about the welfare fund representatives. I did add a little bit of language into the doc from what I was able to understand, that basically the welfare fund is organization that carries a lot of our benefits. It manages a lot of our benefits that aren't the main health insurance. So it deals with pensions, vision, stuff like that. And there's occasional, very occasional meeting that representatives goes to, and is just a representative if there are issues that people are dealing with those particular kinds of benefits. So that's what that position is. And then just real quickly on the time. So Adele, are you saying that for you, the evening meetings are more accessible as a part-time? Was I understanding your correctly when you're talking about 9 to 5, that evenings are better for? Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is easier for me to meet and do anything related
Yeah.
to the union when the meetings are in the evening, but most of the emails that I get is 2 to 4, 12 to
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to campus. I cannot go to campus. I can, and not everything can be done in Zoom.
Right.
So it is impossible.
Yeah. Thanks. That's useful to hear. And just one other just quick piece of information that might be useful is that if anybody is interested in running as for delegate or alternate delegate, those meetings are Thursday evenings once a month. They have been on Zoom. There's sort of ongoing discussion whether it's going to move to high flex or it might move to alternating between in person and on Zoom, but those are just so that information about when those are, that might be useful.
I just wanted to reiterate that in the roles for being active in the union, one of the roles was to be a member of the campus action team. And then we have a Google group where there's a lot of communication about things that are going on. So if that was something you were interested in joining to be more connected to what union activities are going on, that would be something you might want to consider. Because you don't have to jump in as a leader, but certainly we would like for you to be more active and working with us.
Yeah, and I actually just wanted to jump in and just sort of confirm what Adela is saying. Adela, as a fellow adjunct, I I hear what you're saying. I mean, this is one of our biggest issues as adjuncts. Is it's very difficult to get a lot of adjunct representation in leadership at the chapter level, at the PSC wide level, specifically because, as adjuncts, we're the ones who are the most fragmented in our lives. We're working here, we're working 4 other jobs as well. I think another thing to keep in mind, though, is all the union positions at the chapter level, and really all the union positions, except for a few at the very, very top, are all volunteer positions. And I think it's important too for us as members to keep that in mind. That's we have to make sure that whether or not we're members or whether we're leaders, we're taking on a little bit of that responsibility. And just to call back to what I had said at the beginning, part of what I'm interested in that sort of organizing model of a union is that the boundary between who's a leader and who's a member is a lot more permeable, because members can step up and be leaders in certain circumstances and certain times, whether or not they have a technical, technically they have leadership positions or not. And by the same token, since all of our leaders or most of our leaders are volunteers, we need to be prepared as members to step up when things get difficult for them. I think we saw that a lot during the pandemic. Everybody, leaders, members, full-time, part-time, was overworked and going through a difficult position. So the more people we have, more hands make lighter work. I mean, I guess that's the basic idea of it. I just wanted to mention one thing that you said, Adela. You mentioned that you hadn't voted in any elections. Strangely, just because of the way that the pandemic happened, and I think it was in our last chapter election, I believe it was 2020, we didn't actually have an election at LaGuardia, or actually any of the other chapters who had elections that year, because we had all the positions that were up for election in 2020 were uncontested, meaning there was one slate and nobody was running against them. So the PSC Central Union decided that we weren't going to, just because of the pandemic, they weren't going to mail out ballots and go through that whole thing. If the election was uncontested, they were just not going to run an election. So I think for a lot of people, that means the last election at the chapter level that anybody has actually sort of participated in was probably what, 5-6 years ago or something like that. So that is also something to keep in mind, and we're sort of, hopefully we can bring people back into the habit of getting involved in elections this time.
Any other questions or thoughts about the election process?
It's really helpful for me overall because I'm fairly new to this. With the 2020 election, I remember the conversation like, who can we find to fill these spots? That was a big issue to begin with. So that's how I became on the delegate assembly, as well as being department liaison. And as it's been a learning experience, definitely, like having sort of a crash course in the DA and how just the union operates. But yeah, elections never came up before, so it was pretty interesting and informative to hear.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that too. I also feel like I just don't, I wish we had, I don't, I wish we could get more people to run. I feel like we're always just trying to fill the spots, and that is like maybe something that now that we have more people involved, maybe we can like encourage people to like rotate. But as Scott pointed out, I think it might be daunting for people because it does feel like a lot of work, and I think we do maybe habitually lay a lot at the feet of the like leadership locally. It's not that we don't do stuff, but I guess, I personally, like, I don't feel like I could just start shooting off emails in the name of the union as like a member. I'm not in a position of leadership. I don't know if that matters, it seems like it matters. So I feel kind of like, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't have any prepared thoughts, but these are the kinds of things that are kind of humming around in the background, thinking about this. Like we're always just kind of scrambling to get people to fill the slots. And I feel like it's a little intimidating to think of taking on a leadership role. But I also do agree that like we can't lay so much at the feet of the people who volunteer for that, but I don't really know how to interfere with that effectively. Kind of empower people. I feel like people are a little afraid, they kind of want leadership to stand up like for them to the boss, it's like a shield. But that's probably a pretty exhausting position to be in. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I think we want to talk a little bit about next steps, about like kind of spreading the word about getting, just saying, you can do this, you can give this a try. I mean, the reality is when things started happening in the B building and I started sending out some emails, I mean, Lara was like, oh, great. Thanks for taking this on. So, and I definitely felt some of your reticence, Kristen, about certain things. And then I kind of just started, and it really, like I said, Lara was very open to it. And I think that there are enough issues that can be addressed for people to, to pitch in. But as far as getting people to run, I think for Scott and Natalie and I, it's like, just kind of build a buzz, just keep saying, this is something more people can definitely do. I don't know, Scott, do you want to add to that? Or?
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I think, Kristen, just to sort of to address your question, I think one of the things that makes a union a really unique kind of organization is the fact that even though we have leaders and we have members, we're not a hierarchical organization. We're not like a mirror of CUNY with all of its, tiers and vice presidents and presidents and administration and stuff. Part of the reason I think we were drawn to the title of Members Lead Our Union for this talk is exactly that fact. Any member who wants, it's not a matter of a member speaking out for a union or, they're having to be sort of an official channel of communication. Every member has a voice. Every member can speak up. Every member can stick something on the bulletin board. And I think that kind of ethos in a union can make leadership a little bit less scary and a little bit less intimidating and a little bit more like, hey, we're all in this together and we're supporting each other. We're standing up to the boss. We don't have one person standing up to the boss. We have 1,000 of us standing up to the boss, because that's ultimately where our power lies as a union. It's not in having a strong leader, it's in having a strong membership. At least that's my sense of it.
That's what a union is, collective power.
Yeah, and I think going forward, like, just because we're gonna hit up an hour soon, is that, like, certainly we've put together so far these documents which haven't existed in PSC history, it seems like. So we have this PDF we put together of like all the details, like for how the individual runs, how a slate runs, all the deadlines. So you can certainly share that. We have until January for people to declare candidacy. So if you do talk to other people between now and January, like certainly like encourage them to run as an individual, or if they want to form, like their own group and run as a group, as a slate, that's totally fine. But I think that part of it is to encourage more participation, because I think telling ourselves over and over again, oh, no one wants to do it, it's so hard to find people. That might be true, but it also kind of, makes me feel more depressed and not really interested in getting involved if no one else is excited about getting involved. So, so I think like it might be good to try to, like shift our kind of enthusiasm and say like, yeah, we do want a lot of people to run, and it's totally cool to run, and then you figure out what you want to do if you get elected. So, and that's totally cool because there is an infrastructure to support that. So certainly, like let folks know, and also if you were part of a slate in the past, you could always just run on your own, try it out. There's, like as Scott said, we haven't actually had a true election. So it's totally like open at this point. They're going to run a real election this year. So
who is the president? Who is the president now?
Of the chapter? Of the chapter? Laura. And then Laura, are you I always forget who's interim.
Yeah, I was a vice chair. I am
Okay.
the vice chair. I was interim chair when Laura was on sabbatical. Interim chair is only exists when if the chair is away or for some reason. So that is one of the responsibilities of the vice chair, is that you might step in, at some point.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
And I think it's great what you're saying about enthusiasm, and also just really telling people like, if somebody you think would be great, like you will be great at this, right? Like they always say with like running for office of anything, like people have to be asked, women especially have to be asked, like, so I think it's great, not, just in general way, this having this election, but also, talking to someone in particular, say, I think you'd be really great, give it a shot. So thanks you guys for organizing this.
Yeah, and I forgot, we didn't go over it in our little presentation, but so one thing about the chapter chair, it is kind of has some more responsibilities because they also like are coordinating with CUNY Central and like the community colleges, kind of like grouping within the PSC, not CUNY Central, sorry, PSC Central. And when a full-time faculty member is the chapter chair, they received reassigned time, but if a part-time faculty member is chapter chair, they receive a stipend. So for part-time faculty, you are compensated for the time kind of in that like official role, and then like full-time, because of the community college teaching load, like that reassigned time is pretty crucial. But you can also find, just to get a sense of all of the chapter chairs for PSC, I'm going to put it in the chat. Thankfully, the PSC website just got updated, so it's a little easier to navigate now. And you can kind of check out all the different chapters and who's doing what at different campuses that way. But otherwise, any last words, not just from us, but from other folks?
What is I'm really interested. That's why I'm here. But I'm really scared at the same time. Because I want effective leadership. I want effective representatives. And I haven't felt that way for a long time. Not only with the union, but in a general way.
So
I
think that's so great to hear, because we're always like looking for feedback about what you think is working and what's not working. Do you have specific concerns that you would like to get heard? And I think that can like those can then be almost a platform for you. Do you know what I mean?
yes, yes. I occasionally participated in events with LaGuardia Chapter, and every time that I participated in the event, I'm like very critical, and I'm like, why this? How are we gonna get power? How are we gonna get better? How are we gonna get the benefits or obtain what we're really looking for? And in another way, like looking at the mirror, the Dexter, no? Why they're behaving this way, like the administration or CUNY, because they come from us. They are us too. Like they were teachers. Sometimes they were not, but basically they came from administration, or so they came from us. So why we have this dichotomy and those big differences when they should be, thinking the way that we think, and we're academia at the end of the day. We're selling an idea and an ideal of thinking of what we are as academia to our students. And then we became completely opposite what we're saying that we are, or what we are, right? So it is very interesting. So yes, I participated in walking to offices, meeting at the park in a cold day, raining day. What else I did in LaGuardia? Wearing red. I took pictures and send it out. I was here in the office wearing a PSC jacket, saying that everybody knows somebody or loves somebody in CUNY. Exactly. So, but in which way this is gonna really work and is effective, and that's the things that make me super stressed on running, if I at the end of the day decide to do that, or even approach our union, because I want an effective union. I think that we have lost a lot of power. And then the people that get to power, they talk about about how powerful is the union, how democracy is represented by unions, but then they try to suppress union. Get out of,
Right.
get the power that we have, if we have any.
Right. So our goal here is to expand voices, right? Include your voice and more voices. And just, that's what we need. So like I said, join the campus action team. Talk to me. I'm your department rep. So get in touch with me. I've worked with a lot of adjuncts in the department, helping them with stuff. So we hear you for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for coming, Adela, as well as everyone else. 7 o'clock exact. So
Oh, I just wanted to say, for people who aren't yet on the activist email list,
oh, you just got muted, Karen.
oh, maybe you'd be, oh, is that working or not?
You're working now.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
So Adela, there's an email group where there's a list of like maybe
You
150.
know what? I mentioned this to her already. I'll get in touch with her.
Oh, great. Perfect.
All right.
Fantastic. Let me just one quick thing before we finish up, just for anybody who's watching this later on. We're going to put links to all of the things that we've mentioned here in the chat below. So take a look at that. We'll have a complete thing, including the slide presentation we have that I see is now enhanced by cats, which thank you, Natalie. That's really a step up for us. So thank you. And I want to thank Lori and Natalie for really just doing incredible work on this.
Thank you,
And
Scott. You were
yeah.
you spearheaded this.
I feel like I feel like you guys were doing so much work on this. I feel like I'm just along for I just get to reap the benefits of it. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I guess we should probably officially end the meeting. But if anybody has any other questions informally that you want to throw out, feel free to stick around. And thank you all, and please run. Please get your friends and your colleagues to run. We'll post this video as soon as we can. The more people, the better. And thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.